Welcome everyone to the Executive Committee meeting for the Village of Gulf Manor. Today's date is October 11th, 2021. May we start with roll?
Ms. Cheney?
Here.
Mr. Pritnoff is not here. Mr. Simile?
Here.
Ms. Snyder?
Here.
Mr. Wilkinson?
Here.
All members are present except for Mr. Pritnoff.
Do I have a motion to excuse Mr. Pridnoff?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Has everyone had a chance to look at tonight's agenda? And if so, do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Motion to adopt.
Second.
All in favor?
Actually, I'm sorry. Did there need to be anything as far as old business regarding the conversation about the Recreation Commission?
Should be on here.
Would someone like to make a motion to amend?
Old business to add the Recreation Commission ordinance.
Do I have a motion, or I need a second for that?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, and do I have a motion to accept the agenda as amended?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And if everyone has had a chance to look at the minutes from the 13th of September, do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
Make a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Okay, and now we are on to a new business. Tonight we have Mr. Andre from Go Zero giving us a presentation.
Yes.
Are you all set with your technology?
I hope so. I think so. I've been properly trained, so I'm ready to
Perfect.
kick it off. I'll try to make sure that I 10 minutes, 5 minutes? What's
Probably
good?
15, 20.
15,
You're good.
15, 20. I'll tell an extra story or two.
Excellent.
My name is David Andre. We'll get into the slides, and my goal for this evening is to hope to win some hearts and minds in the direction of a project that we've been talking about, and we'll take it from there. And I've got some introductions, so we'll just start walking through slides. I've had a chance to connect with Ron and Andy concerning the property there on Stover Avenue. My organization, we are in food waste composting. It's a specialty form of recycling, you might say. A little bit of my story. I grew up on the farm 30 minutes west of Toledo. We provide disposal services all over western and central Ohio. And one of the challenges in our space is having outlets for the material. Once we've collected it, finding places where we can do actual composting. Everybody loves the idea of composting until you start trying to have conversations about doing it in one's backyard.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've connected with the county at large. They directed me y'all's direction in terms of a community that frankly has been working to find efficiencies in your leaf disposal process. And I think that there might be some synergies. The property on the screen is one that's been highlighted as a possibility where we might be able to stockpile some leaves, and then in combination with some of the material that I collect from around town, recycle those leaves into a soil amendment. I might be getting ahead of myself. I've got a few slides to kind of walk through the process and the concept. But I'm going to be very interested in some dialogue, Q&A style here in a minute. But my understanding is that there's also an interest in expanding the community garden programming in the community. So that's the location in question. A little bit more, I guess maybe I've gotten ahead of myself. The village, to my understanding, is looking to find efficiencies in their leaf disposal costs. Would like to expand the community garden. It has a property that's somewhat underutilized on Stover Avenue, and is in, to my understanding, there's interest in redeveloping that. And I think this project that I am proposing would be a very good bridge program in that direction. Be able to cause the site to be a feather in the community's cap while leaving the door open to future opportunities. My organization, Go Zero, because of the not in my backyard tendencies of what we do, it's been really challenging finding a location and a partner that would be willing to take a chance on us in establishing a site here in Hamilton County. It's been in the last 10 years or so that there was an organization by the name of Compost Cincy that got started doing some composting, and it was quite the debacle. I think that to say that they got in over their head and bit off more than they could chew is a bit of an understatement if you've got context for the story. And the goal here is that we would make certain that doesn't happen here. Our organization, we've got trucks and run long distances. We are entirely capable of continuing on with the infrastructure we've got, but we're looking for an opportunity to prove ourselves a good neighbor by starting with a very small introductory pilot project. How am I doing so far? Everybody
Great.
making sense? What we're talking about is a pile about this size. I have been in the lab. It's really been a 2020 goal that's become a 2021 goal for obvious reasons to find host sites and partners that would be willing to allow us to do some composting on site. One of the strategies I found that works really well is to do just a small truckload of food waste as a introductory demo pilot of composting. And so here, this is a friend's property in the back 40, in rural Ohio, outside of Bell Fountain, where we had unloaded some food waste that we gathered. We had a critical mass of wood chips present, and we created an oversized compost, just like you might do in your backyard garden, but with a bobcat rather than your garden shovel. Right on. So the essence of what I'm proposing, and would love to get a chance to chat with you all on this evening, is as a step toward a slightly larger ongoing relationship, I'd like to have a demo day, for lack of a better way of talking about it, where we have some wood chips or leaf waste on site.
Sorry about that.
Wait. We bring in some of the material that we've collected from surrounding communities, and we turn it into a giant composting pile. And I say giant, but in Ohio, if we can keep it under 500 square foot activity, it falls below any kind of regulatory purview. And the goal is, I'd love for the community, yourselves included, to get a chance to see firsthand what it is we're proposing. If that makes sense. Wonderful. Looking forward. Maybe. Can you help me?
Not working?
We're doing so well. Yeah, it's on a roll.
Well, that's good.
And that concludes my, no. Have a nice day.
So are you suggesting that first picture, that first dump would be like the pilot day and then more would be added? Okay.
Precisely. There's maybe three horizons. One is, hey, I'd love for you to come out for an hour or some afternoon between now and the end of the year so that you can see what we're talking about. When the material comes out of the truck, if you can imagine, this juicery's leftover pulp, and that breakfast shop's leftover cracked egg shells,
Mhm.
and the linguine from the Italian restaurant up and around the corner of the street, it's food waste. It's pretty real. It can get raw,
Uh-huh.
but the beauty of it is that it is possible with critical mass, leaf waste, wood chips, carbon, to get it into a pile where it's stable and not at all a nuisance.
Okay.
And so, demo day, first horizon, let's make an event of it and invite constituents in the community to become aware of what's going on. Really, my goal would be that the property could get used as community garden, and this composting thing would be almost incidental. But I would love to help with recycling of leaves and create this unique project in the community. And what's in it for me is that I get a chance to prove myself a reliable operator doing this type of activity, albeit very small,
Mhm.
on an ongoing basis, where maybe we deliver just a little bit of food waste week over week for, whatever, a year's time or something like that, with the knowledge that if ever there was any kind of issue, we're able to take it elsewhere. We're able to help recover. And shall I try to click through again?
So hopefully you're back in business. Figuring.
There's the overview, why are we here, picture, introductions, and maybe this is out of order. A little bit of background, spoke to that. Founded Go Zero Services after having grown up on the farm around composting. Food waste reduction, donation, and especially recycling through composting is a passion of mine. Because everybody eats, it's a problem we all have, and we'll always have apple cores and banana peels. No matter how much we're able to donate or how efficient we're able to get with our food waste. Go Zero itself is a not-for-profit, and our thing is providing services that are catalytic and helping individuals and organizations, do for themselves by doing that which is hard for them to do the heavy lifting so they can do for themselves. We specialize in providing services to food service operators, so think schools and restaurants. So COVID has been particularly hard on us, but knock on wood, I think we're going to survive. And we're big on, we don't inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children. It's credited a couple different ways, but Chief Seattle, the West Coast was one that quote is commonly attributed to. And the idea that, leaving an inheritance for one's children's children. That's something that from King Solomon long ago, that we're big on taking care of the environment, stewarding community and natural resources. So there's a little bit of context. It's maybe a little bit out of order, not to have started there. Some context. The core of what we do as an organization, that's Go Zero, is we'll set green carts out like these behind any school or restaurant or other operator that would have us. And the value proposition is if you can get your organic material into our carts, we'll take it from there and make sure it's transported to a Class 2 licensed EPA regulated compost facility. And I think the subtext is those types of facilities are few and far between, and we're working to try to establish more composting capacity closer to the greater Cincinnati area. So I think that tells the story that we tiny operation. We have poor man's trash trucks. It's a modified dump truck where the body itself is built from high carbon steel so as to not be so subject to corrosion. If you're putting tomato juice and other foodstuffs in the truck, it'll be a little bit more corrosive. And the tailgate itself is watertight. So when we take the containers up and over the tail, everything stays inside the truck. The service that we provide, we empty the containers, pressure wash them out, and then we put a compostable liner. It's possible to create plastic goods out of plant-based oil rather than petroleum and engineer them so that they'll actually break down in a compost pile. So far, questions?
No.
Okay. So that's what we've been doing. In December, we'll have been operational for 5 years. Again, knock on wood. They say small businesses, organizations tend to fail the first 5, and we're excited about trying to continue to get more established in the community, helping people recycle their organic matter. Why food waste composting? It's great for sustainability, but from an economic, community, and environmental perspective, there's a lot of positive buzz around it. Funding, food waste programming tends to attract funding. I think that, a case could be made that, the property in question, could be a community garden, there could be some leaf composting and call it a day. I think that I would love to bring a little bit more momentum around a little bit higher profile, cause this to be a best-in-class program where we're able to do more than just address a leaf problem and create some space for gardening. This is where we could solve some other community problems in the form of recycling foodstuffs as well. And then precedent. One of the reasons why I'm really excited to talk to you all this evening is in 2018, across town in Madisonville, we were able to pilot a small project where we set out a few of our containers and individuals from the community brought their kitchen scraps from home and put them in the containers. It was like a recycling station from the 1990s, but instead of aluminum cans or plastic bottles, people were bringing the kitchen scraps. This concept of a drop-off station in 2018 was a real challenge to get that very first proof of concept program established. But since having been able to do that, the concept of a drop-off station has kind of caught on across the state, where a lot of municipalities in central Ohio and even up into Toledo, part of our footprint, have hosted containers exclusively for residential use, where rather than doing a curbside program, residents self-select as to, rather than putting your kitchen scraps in the trash, you can collect them in a bucket that either we provide or otherwise, varies program to program, and it's really caught on. And so I'm hopeful that the proposition of piloting an actual composting facility on a small basis will open the door and break the seal, so to speak, to more communities wanting to do likewise. And my interest is not so much in that we have to have a large scale volume, achieve critical mass, achieve ROI. This is just prove the concept. It can be very small, and I drive a Volt, and so one of the things that I offer to our commercial customers and to you all is that, if there's a problem, like I'm committed to making sure it works. Like, this is my business, and just the opportunity to prove the concept while hoping to help the community is really where it's at for me. So, it's a little bit.
Dave, we have
Sir.
about 5 more minutes.
Sure. Okay. Other testimony from others. There's some links in the PDF that speak to the virtues of food waste composting. John Oliver even got in on the action a few years back. I'll invite you to take a look at that on your own time. There's a clip from the Compost Story. It's a great 7-minute soup to nuts story about food waste composting. There happens to be a section in there about yard waste and leaf waste. I thought it was appropriate for the need that we're trying to address with the village. What about drawbacks? I think I've maybe underlined already. I've gotten ahead of myself just a little bit. Very often there's a handful of typical questions. Odors we can address with having ample leaf waste and yard waste on site. Animals the same, whether it's raccoons or squirrels or otherwise. These are common problems. This is my business, the sort of thing that we manage. Leachate and trash we can manage. And again, the point is, it's possible, I believe, to keep it small so as to prove the concept, walk before we run. And costs, I think we can get into that, trying to focus on keeping it straightforward in the course of keeping my comments to not more than the next 5 minutes. Go Zero is able to bring to bear some of the seasonal, more unique equipment and labor that's needed. And one of the things we have a challenge with, though, is some of the week-over-week incidental support. In our conversations, we've talked about whether or not the village might be able to help manage material, a couple hours a week with equipment that's already owned. I think there's an interesting synergy that might be possible there. I hope I'm speaking to it adequately. That there's kind of those two different ingredients: incidental, week-over-week labor, and then seasonal, more sophisticated. I think that both our organizations together could have that in hand quite readily. John Oliver, obviously talking about raccoons and creatures and those types of issues. How could it work? Just trying to put a point on it. At left, speaking in terms of a demo day where there's a truckload or partial truckload of some of the types of material that we would make show up. We make sure to have ample yard waste on hand and a front-end loader. Invite parties and stakeholders that would be appropriate, and we can see for ourselves. The goal would be to demystify what can be kind of a scary proposition, and let that pile. Typically with composting, it's a matter of turning the pile from time to time. We could allow however many weeks or months that would be necessary until the village found itself comfortable with the idea of doing more. And then I don't see it happening sooner than the 1st of January. Based on our experience together of this demo day and this initial pile, chart a course where, if it's once a week or once a month or however often, there's an appetite to receive a little bit of food waste, Go Zero can make it show up. And we'd have some routines established where that would become part of how we address leaf waste in the village, in context of some community gardening, as done by folks who are already doing community gardening in the community. So that is the guts of it. The pile itself, wanted to provide just a couple more pictures for the sake of introductions. This was all the same day. This is what it looked like when we were done. This is what it looked like when it came off the truck. And there's a shot of the type of what it looks like once it's done composting.
How long does that take?
There's a couple different answers. It can take as little as 6 months, or 6 weeks. But typically, if you give it 6 to 12 months, it'll compost down into a better product.
Sure.
So,
It's a wine.
what's that? Right,
Wine.
right. Exactly. And it's. I don't have time to get into all of the details, but man, the microbial activity, and just like you've got flora in your gut, the same is true of soil, right? And what we're doing, I think, is really, I'm excited about it growing to a place where community gardening and large-scale agriculture, we're able to contribute to the health of our overall soil. And the nutrients, it's not a synthetically generated fertilizer, it's an organically bound NPK, macro type of configuration. So, yes, sir. Additional questions and concerns? I think we're just about out of time, but thank you for your time.
So this is a spark of an idea. We have the land in Stover. There's a couple of things to consider. This is not a permanent solution. This would not be a permanent thing that we would do back there. At least that's not what we're thinking right now. It's reparative of the land to have this type of operation back there. And there, at one time, I think 15, 20 years ago, there was some testing that was done that there was a thought that there was some leaching from Hilton Davis coming across Langdon Farm Road. Obviously, we'd have to have that tested to confirm and see where we are now. But there was a lot of pluses to doing something like this with this program, is it would allow us to actually use that land now. It would take care of some of the maintenance of that land, which right now we're just going back and cutting it, and areas of it are just overgrown. The other piece of this is it would also put people back there, which this is an area that is not well-traveled. We have a lot of issues with garbage. Mr. Podol can tell you that there's a lot of maintenance stuff that needs to be done back there, just on the land itself, simply because there are not people back there and it's not well-traveled. I think this is a phased kind of thing for us. It makes sense to see what this composting process looks like, to see what kind of issues might be on the concerns list that we might run into. We definitely want to be considerate of the neighbors who are living on both sides of that land so that we don't create a quality of living issue for them. But if indeed the test pilot would work out well, then I think the other things that we can start doing is thinking about what community gardens might look like along there. Again, planning, we'd have to plan this out and figure out where stuff would go and what we would do with it. But I think there's a lot of pluses into considering something like this at this point in time. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Andre?
I do have one. Once it's composted, what then?
Well, first and foremost, I'd love to make it available to the village. My business is primarily in providing disposal services. And, you're not the first person to ask, what do you do with it once it's composted? If the village has got a use for it, awesome. If we can make it available to residents, great. If you need help just finding a home for it, I'm happy to help in that way as well.
I have a question about, where does the food waste come from, like you talked about, putting it outside of schools, or like, do you have already have a set of businesses that you?
Yep, we've got several routes. Trucks roll through Hamilton County, Greater Cincinnati. I think like 3 or 4 routes every week, and so it's pretty well established. We've been doing it for 5 years, and it's the kind of thing where rather than hauling it back out cross country to farm country to the nearest licensed facility, if we could bring a little bit of it here as an introduction to Greater Cincinnati, hosting some of it in the wake of other operators who have maybe bit off more than they could chew, kind of ease into the idea of what would it look like to host local composting at a commercial scale.
What would the amount of traffic look like that would be generated, as far as like how many trucks, how often?
I think that's not very many, and I would lean hard on the village in terms of what are you comfortable with? Again, if it's 1 truck per week or 1 truck per month, or would you be comfortable with a little bit more truck traffic? That it could be twice a week or 3 times a week, and it would be trucks unique to the operation, and we're not trying to create a landfill or any kind of truck stop out here, right on. So 100% your comfort level and the quality of life of the residents around this particular property, in that there are as many single-family households immediately adjacent. Chatting with the Ohio EP, they're like, hey, there's a lot of residential space right around that. That's really, in the grand scheme of what you look for in the site, it's not ideal. But I think in the context of all we're trying to do is prove a concept, it's very good. And I think to your point about it being a transitionary thing, the goal would be that we would create a bright spot for the community, and in another 5 or 10 years, whatever kind of master plan you might have for that space, that'll be great. And by then, we'll have had our proof of concept, and everybody will want a composting facility just like you all have had, right?
Senator Billy, the mayor had a question.
Yeah, and I apologize for being late. If this was already covered, just stop me. So I've seen some other facilities kind of like this, and when I pulled into them to get some of the completed compost, what it looked like is there was some piles that were still composting, right? Some that were completed, and I'm wondering how we're informed of that, how that communication works in terms of like the testing of it. Is that on us? Is that on you guys? And then also like how are you gonna do? Is it just one big pile, or is there separate piles by date so you can gauge them? How does that work?
So that's 100% the sort of thing that my organization can help with. It would ideally be a progressive thing where, for example, at left is where fresh material is coming in, we're building new piles and so on and so forth. And what my family's operation is exactly in the context of 10 acres. It's at the south end where we receive net new material. And then we turn the material so that as the material matures, cures, and composts, by the time that material arrives at the north end of the property, it's clear that it's kind of caramely brown, kind of like wood chips. By the time it gets to the north, it's that black, healthy compost that you'd expect. And getting that through a sieve or a screener, making sure that it's EPA regulated and EPA tested. Those are the things that I can bring to bear. And I think that's where there's an opportunity for a partnership where I can bring some of those more technical pieces into play. And I'm hopeful that the village might be able to help with some of the day-to-day, keeping an eye on the store, so to speak, in terms of people being around and things like this. So there absolutely is. There are details to have managed in terms of making sure that, please don't take the raw stuff, the new stuff. Take this good stuff over here that's ready to be used in your garden, right?
Anyone else have a question?
So, understanding you're a nonprofit, 501c3, true understanding, so you get this food waste. I understand you're always looking for places to put it, right? How is your revenue generated for your organization?
We charge fees for disposal.
Okay.
And so I like explaining it in context or as a cousin of document destruction.
Sure.
right? Where there was a time when document instruction was a novelty, and then it was nice to have. And especially for banking, financial services and medical industries, like it's essential today. And so, today, food waste composting, food waste composting disposal is kind of still a novelty. We charge fees for our service, and it's bragging rights for this breakfast joint or that coffee shop to be able to them say, hey, we're putting our money where the mouth is. We've subscribed to this additional service beyond just putting our waste in the dumpster. We're committed to making sure that our organic material gets recycled through composting. So that's where our grocery money comes from.
Where do you see the primary, so like after the composting is done, the process is done, where do you primarily see that the compost goes?
Today, our compost goes to local farmers, again, because we're traveling out to farm country
Sure.
and composting out in the countryside. It's very easy, a little bit quicker turn,
Yeah.
making that material available on an agricultural basis.
Got
If we were composting in a more urban setting, that's where rather than 6 weeks, maybe we get a full 6 months.
Yeah.
And it composts down into something you'd rather have in your flower bed, rather than, if you're just growing corn and soybeans, you might not be as worried if everything's as beautiful, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
It's easy for me now to see where the food waste would come from and how it might generate a truck or two a week, whatever. But the leaves, we produce most of our stuff in one part of the year. So how do you do that? Does that all of ours get housed there and you use it? Or do you have to bring that in from elsewhere too, to keep up with it?
In the context of the pilot, the work that we do, I think, would be scaled first to whatever critical mass of leaves and yard waste are there on site. And whatever, I know the season's coming up, and the concept is, save yourself a couple truckloads and just put them here in jurisdiction. And if it's 5 truckloads, awesome. We'll work to scale what food waste we bring to that, right? If we get going and we really like what's happening, and there's an interest in sourcing wood chips or some other carbon, we could do that and we could scale it. But my goal is step one, just to help you with your leaf disposal need, get the thing licensed and help you with the technical support aspect, just to prove the concept, right on. And so if it's, that's where I hope it goes, is that we discover that, oh man, this is a cool thing. We want to do more. Let's not handcuff ourselves to only disposing of what leaves we happen to have held over from whatever previous fall that might happen to be. Hope that
So
makes
Andy,
sense.
how many truckloads do we generate? Just curious.
A lot.
Okay.
In peak leaf season, we can't even get through one half of one side of the street without generating a truckload that needs to be
Oh,
dropped
yeah.
off.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much,
Thanks so much.
Mr. Andre. You're welcome to stay for the rest of our meeting if you would like. It's very exciting. Or you can head on out and grab a cookie on your way.
I might cookie.
Thank you very much.
I look forward to hearing from you. Please do, yes.
So there's a lot of discussion we're gonna need to have around this issue. The other thing is that this program is supported by Hamilton County Recycling,
Mhm.
and there is grant and funding, resources available to help get this program started.
Yeah.
So,
Great.
sparking an idea.
Particularly on the equipment side.
Really? Okay. That is good to know. All right. Next up, Mr. Putoff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, everyone get my reports?
Yes.
Does anyone have questions regarding those?
One thing I'd like to see on it would be addresses all the time and streets. Some of those reports don't have it on there. I don't know if I brought it. The one report does. It'll help me because I've been walking and I've been reporting.
I can't control how the reports are run, it's through the software.
Okay. Oh, so this is the software you input?
This is all through CitizenServe. Everything I do, I enter it into CitizenServe and print them off.
Jim,
Okay.
is there a way to link that to the Cages platform?
It actually is.
Maybe that will solve what Ms. Cheney's looking for if we're able to do that.
I just don't wanna double, book you on things.
No.
So when you type in the address, it locates and verifies that the owner is correct. And I believe, I don't know if that was a single database that went in.
It goes to him, at least the Hammond County Auditor's Office, that's where the information comes from.
Right.
But what I'm thinking is like there's communities like Corning Township where all the property maintenance issues are pasted right there on a map on their website, and any resident can go to that map.
Oh, I can do it by
and
map.
follow along.
The violation,
Well, I guess what I'm saying is we can add it to the website, which might be helpful for.
yeah, so there's a violation, I can run a report of violation by map. And it'll show you where all the violations are, but not, all of the activity doesn't necessarily mean it's a violation.
Right.
There's a difference.
Right.
So, Jim, the one report that you ran specifically says violation.
Those are, and I can run that, it overlays onto a map. But the other report, which is the activity report, is that someone calls and complains about something. I go out and I talk to the resident and say, hey, can you clean this up? Or I send them a letter and it gets done. There's no violation, but it's logged in the system that, that there was an incident or a case number for however you want to call it, and then we went out and dealt with it.
Okay.
But it doesn't necessarily mean that there was a violation, that we issued a notice of violation. It's like high grass. You get a warning the first time, like door hanger, hey, your grass is high, mow it. I log it, but it's not a notice of violation.
So obviously there's some overlap between the online complaint report and the violations report because some of those did result in violations,
Yes.
right? Okay.
And there are times when, last week, for example, not all property maintenance related calls go to you.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of times they come to me, and sometimes they went to the fire department. So last week, one came in with the police and fire that we went and checked out, and that was clearly a property maintenance issue. It wasn't a life health emergency, and that's not getting tracked in that system.
Okay.
Well, if it comes to me, I enter it.
Oh, I know. What I'm saying is this call came for flooding from a drain in an apartment.
Oh, okay.
And for whatever reason, they called the fire department to respond. And it was just a drain backed up in the garage. But so that's not gonna make it in the report, because the fire department isn't going.
Right.
So one of the takeaways from this is your activity report from April to October has about 300 contacts. So those are, I would assume that the average of that is 300 individual contacts you've had regarding complaints that you've received.
The complaints I receive are self-generated. From driving the village and I see something and I initiate a case.
So to say it quickly, you've had 300 things you've looked into. And I would say looking, and this is the report that's up there, I'm looking at the total violation report. It looks like it's 75% resolved.
Yes. A lot of the ones that aren't resolved are in court. So it's 55 and 65 Stover are actually, we're in court with it right now to get the buildings torn down, have them raised.
Is it a similar situation with 2249 Santiville?
Yes. Actually, that case had a continuance and they didn't show up for court tonight, so it'll probably be a
Okay.
KBS issue for them.
And would you say that online complaints are taking up the bulk of your time, or no?
Self-generated.
Okay, so that's the majority
Stover
of.
issue has taken up a lot of time. I initiated the vacant property, and that's a matter of, we're using waterworks to find out who doesn't have water.
Mhm.
And then I go out and I try to confirm that the one residence, there's someone was actually living there, but waterworks said they had no water.
Jeez, okay.
So I confirm that, the best I can, that it is a vacant, then I issue the orders. Then they have 30 days. If they don't comply, then I'm just inside McCord.
Okay.
This end of Weehee, I think every building there except one has orders on it. And, you know, the idea is that they comply with the property maintenance code, so we have to give them a reasonable amount of time to do this.
Mm-hmm.
I know there was an incident at Sanibel and Ardmore last week where someone left a bunch of garbage and furniture out, and, you know, the way the code's written, I sent the owner of the property notice, but it's through US mail. We all know that could take, and it was just going to Westchester. It took almost 6 days for him to receive it. And the day he received it, he came down and I went and met with them and we got it resolved. But, you know, sometimes things don't happen as quickly as people would like. It's because we have a process we have to follow by law.
Right. Does anyone else have any questions for Mr. Putoff?
So at this point, we're now starting to focus on the vacant building ordinance on some of the commercial properties. I think there's one that we know that's particularly blighted, and then we're still working on the one at the end of the cul-de-sac, so.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you, Jim, and the administration. This is a level of detail I don't think council's had before on this. It's really appreciated.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it was a really interesting read.
And I can certainly provide the map too. That's easy.
Okay.
I was just thinking we could link it to the website somehow.
Yeah.
That way, if there's ever a question, I know other communities, they link it to the website. And, you know, if it was my neighbor and I was curious, boom, I can go to the property and you can follow along in the process, where they are, where they are in violation. Might be helpful.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Say on that
Anything that
house
we can do for you?
Look at plans.
Sorry. We do need, I would like to have oversight on the roofs. Right now, when someone has a roof put on, there's no permit required, so there's no zoning. And the property maintenance code is specific about certain things that have to take place. And the one that I see that causes probably the most damage to roofs is the lack of ice and water guard, which is the first 3 feet up is a sticky membrane that self-seals. It prevents when your gutters freeze and thaw. If you don't have it there, it pushes, water will get pushed back up underneath the shingles. And if you don't have that ice and water dam in there to protect it, it will get into the wood and start rotting the roof.
Oh, yeah.
Do I?
That's what Robin is all about that.
Yeah, so I would like to have the ability to ensure that the roofers are doing that right and it protects the homeowners. Because most people, they don't know this stuff, you know, why would they?
Right.
And you put a roof on every 20 years, so they're, you know, they're more concerned about the color of the shingle than what's actually going underneath them. Dumpsters,
Mhm.
I think Chris would agree, we need to have especially something on the street. If they want to order a dumpster on the street, I would like to see a nominal permit fee, you know, $25, and then a time frame how long the dumpster's allowed to stay there, and something that says they're responsible for any damage they cause to our streets. Because if they don't put plywood under the rollers, it tears the asphalt up.
The other thing we had talked about is having the requirement for a zoning certificate for any outdoor work that's structural. So if you put up a fence, fences do not require building permits, but we require a zoning certificate. We should do that with driveways. We should do that with walls. We should do that with reconstruction of stairs. We should do it with building decks. There's a beautiful deck that was built just in the last couple of weeks on Bremont at Mayflower, with a new fence. It's dark brown on the sides.
Mhm.
I don't believe any of that was zoning certificated or permitted.
And what we need to do is we need to make it more clear to the residents what is required and what isn't. And no offense to anyone, but the website's as clear as mud on it. We need to be very specific, you know, like it says electrical work. Well, if I change an outlet, that's electrical work.
Mhm.
You know, there's a big difference between a switch and outlet, minor household repairs versus rewiring a house. And I think we just need to be able to be consistent in what we're requiring and with, you know, from job site to job site.
Is something like that deck something that the contractor would be required to look into, or would it be people who are paying?
They should know it.
They should know, but
That's
ultimately it's the
responsibility.
homeowner who will be cited for it.
It's like the woman on Fremont with the fence that had no idea that she couldn't do a front yard fence.
If they're businesses,
They should know.
they should know what what rules are in place for in which the community to work. Now, that's not to say that the homeowner, the first responsibility should clearly be on the homeowner to do the research.
But it may have been a group of guys that they know.
But a lot of
came over on
times
the
it's,
weekend and just built that.
it's not Mills Fence, it's people who work for Mills Fence moonlighting.
And if driveways are widened, there's a permit needed too, right?
Driveways
I tried to
actually,
read online today, and it sounded like it to me.
driveways are not, what needs to be followed is the setbacks from the property line and the amount of square footage that's taken in a front yard, which is why expansion of a driveway requires a variance.
Yeah.
But what we've run into is we don't require, there's no building permit required. That if we don't
Okay.
require a zoning certificate, then we don't know that they're even doing the project. And that's happened to us a couple of times where people just built them, and then we've had to go after the fact and enforce it.
Well, and
There's one right now, going on Graceland. They're digging it out, and it's going up.
that's a retaining wall that.
It's a retaining wall they're doing that far over?
Well, I drove by it and I saw the
Yeah.
bottom or the front loader there and it's, they have the retaining wall dug out and it looks like they're rebuilding it. But there's nobody working on it there today, so I couldn't tell what they're really were doing. But the other thing too, and this is the whole purpose of permits, is it protects the homeowner. The permit is to make sure that the job is done correctly and to code, and at least if we're asking for a zoning certificate for a driveway, someone's getting eyes on me that that's okay, the minimum thickness of concrete is supposed to be poured. I can ask all these questions up front. How much rebar are you putting in, what size rebar? And we have resources like Matt Scott who can, if I have questions, I can easily call Matt, say, hey, is this up to what it should be for code? And that's the whole purpose of codes, is to protect people. And I think that's the approach we should take with the zoning stuff, is that even if the county doesn't require a permit, at least somebody's putting eyes on it.
What are the costs involved in permits and zoning and?
Zoning $69.37 or something for a certificate.
Yeah, we use for the zoning certificate, we use the county's formula to charge for that.
And typically for building permits, a percentage of the total estimate for the job.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, I just want the barrier to entry to be low for folks.
oh, I agree. There's no reason to, and that's why, the zoning's cheap. Building permits tend to be more expensive.
Well, and if they get into a situation where they have to do an after the facts variance, then it's $200 just
Yeah,
for
so
the commission.
penalty to that.
And decks really should be included. Decks should have a building permit to do. Because, you see how much stuff people put on decks, they throw hot tubs on there. If they're not framed correctly for that added weight, then it's a failure.
I thought that you have to have a county permit for a deck. If it's over 200 square feet, it needs to be. permitted.
Yeah, we need to make sure the county, well, when we require zoning for it, when we catch them, then the county tends to be more resilient on that. For residential building permits, you don't need a stamp drawing, or you can do a hand drawing for the county to get a permit. So it's the level of expectation for residential versus commercial is completely different.
How do we go about getting all this changed? With planning commission? Okay. Sorry.
I think it'd be real easy. I think the simple solution is to get with communities that have ordinances on some of this stuff, and there's no reason to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
Take the best out of it, give it to Terry or Rob, and let them write it for us.
I believe Mr. Donnellan has already looked into dumpsters and pod.
Dumpsters, pods, and porta potties.
That's right. So we should have some of that.
He's pulled some legislation because of other issues that we've admired in this year. We're going to have to move very quickly on some of these other things. I think these are things we'll want to get taken care of in the first quarter next year.
Could you send like a I don't know a better word for it, a wish list of codes that we want to add or update, that would make your life easier in planning commission?
Yeah, it's not much, because primary maintenance code does a really good between that and the ordinances. It's pretty well covered. And I think it reaches as far as it should reach, you know.
Thank you for all your work.
Yeah.
You're
You
welcome.
do a great job.
So, I know, so appreciate it.
And we
Well, it's
just,
a process and, you know, it's gonna take a while to get things, you know.
We're so far behind, that's why. Didn't help any.
Oh, there is one other, you brought up the sidewalks.
Yeah.
I know years ago, we used to do a sidewalk project. Rather than, I think, going to individuals right now that have sidewalks in disrepair, that we may perhaps look at in the spring of doing a side, and I didn't run this by you guys ahead of time, I should have, but. So we walk the village, we make a list, and we might be able to get the residents a better deal if we can contract, you know, put it out for bid or something. So we don't have 10 different contractors and 20 different homeowners trying to do it themselves.
I think that's a great idea.
That's a great idea.
So the ones that I think we should just back off of right now, wait for this, come up with a plan, and then spring, you know, execute that plan.
Yeah, but that one's really bad.
Where's it at?
Well, the one's gonna create, the problem's a tree.
It's like a,
What's-
yes,
what
it's like
street is
a
it on?
ramp. It goes up
On
straight and
Graceland.
it goes,
There's a couple.
yeah, you gotta walk around the grass.
Where's it at?
Really?
And the trees. It's
I
60 through, 62,
It's
77.
There was a few like that on Stover, and they had
That's over.
they had no problem
Mayflower?
fixing that.
It's Mayflower, then there's, I walked Camel and I walked,
Yeah, there's a couple areas. It's not.
no, they haven't done Mayflower, it was Grace,
It's
either Graceland
Graceland.
or, it might be Graceland.
It is, I just went and looked at it.
Because if it's nighttime or somebody's on a bike, it's gonna throw them. A kid, that's how bad it is.
Oh, but the problem, I mean, you can't just report a 10-hour report, you gotta deal with the root.
You gotta deal with the tree too.
Tree.
So that's,
Mm,
I didn't think we should talk about it and come up with a plan
okay.
and then execute
Okay.
that plan equally.
Sounds great.
Hey,
Well, thanks again. Oh, whoa. Who are you?
Sinister.
All right. Now, moving on to old
Thanks,
business. I'm sorry, Mr. Hurth, you're gonna have to talk fast.
Yeah, so really, some of these things I want to talk about in the main meeting tonight, the transition to the new waste collection services has been fine. Put out your recycling tonight, because this traditionally was not a recycling night. We're still on track for yard waste services to begin on Monday, October the 18th. The playground equipment replacement, the equipment has been ordered. I talked to the rep today. And then fire services replacement, we'll be talking about that later this evening. And the vacant building ordinance, we just had discussion about. The other things that are in pending business are likely things that we could get to next year, because this committee only has one more meeting in 2021. You'll pick up again in January,
That's hard to
after
believe.
next month. So hopefully we'll get some of these loose ends tied up.
Great. All right, thank you. And then my only announcement is that we meet next on the 8th at 6 p.m. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Just one quick thing.
Oh,
The recreation.
That's right.
Commission ordinance. Steve Simile and I met with Mr. Hurth, and my sister joined us too, because she was a commissioner. And we went over the ordinance, and we had some ideas what to do, and then we decided to wait until after this strategic, what's that thing called?
Strategic
Plan.
Stuff,
discussion.
yeah, to see if people are even interested in recreation before we go any further with it. So it's on hold.
Thank you. All right, now do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. Please grab a cookie.
Tell them to stay here.